Hey everybody, welcome to episode 10 of Untapped. Today it's just me and Levi. We got, of course, Dana here in the house and Miss Taya. So we're just gonna flow today a little bit. We're gonna Levi's got a pretty exciting fire surprise question. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. What are you burning over there?
Palo Santo is this, and that's just sage. Joey gave it to me, so I was like, I'll light that for the pod.
Right on.
But the question is, if LeBron James trained MMA for 5 years, would he be UFC champion?
Man, that's a tough one.
He's 6'9", 250.
Yeah. If he started now in his career?
Today, and then 5 years from today, he fought Ngannou.
I'm kind of thinking at the age that he's at and how he's trained his body. I feel like basketball players, the sport of basketball, they're like the worst fighters. I mean,
if you put him in his prime 5 years,
yeah. Oh, in his prime,
I think he would annihilate
with those genetics.
Because basketball players are the most athletic.
I think he would be disgusting. I mean, genetically, there's nobody. I mean, think about how much bigger than Cyril Gane he would be.
Is there anybody in the UFC as athletic as LeBron James?
Maybe John Jones, maybe. But even then, it's like,
I don't think so though.
No, he's only just now finding powerlifting.
That's why I think John Jones can train, not train, do all this craziness, and still come back and beat guys.
Yeah,
because he's that much more athletic than everybody.
I remember Colby Covington said that he would starch LeBron right now. I think that fight needs to happen.
I don't think Colby Covington's that athletic when it comes to like if you put Colby Covington on the basketball court, I bet he can't shoot or nothing.
No.
When I think about the fighters though, like I look at in our gym, like you got Tim Welch. You might, I don't know if he's that. I haven't seen him play. I think I've seen him play basketball, and he's not the best athlete, but he's, man, fighting against that guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's such a different type of athleticism, I think. I don't know. That's a good question. I think we're going to need to see that in the future.
Like, I'm trying to think who would be, like Izzy. Izzy's super athletic in fighting, but I bet Izzy can ball too, though. Like, Izzy's an athlete, Sean. Who else is like supreme athletes at the top, like big names?
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard because I feel like in UFC in particular, I've always been like, none of these guys, unless like they're not really in other sports. I just don't see it.
I guess Habib's good at soccer though.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I don't know.
Wasn't he playing soccer or something?
I think so. I think a lot of Russians do.
Yeah.
When we're measuring athleticism, because there's like good golfers, right? So athleticism has to be reaction, conditioning, all those things that go into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess if you did an athleticism test, like what sport would win? Basketball for sure, probably, right?
I was thinking GSP was he's a pretty athletic guy.
Yeah.
Do a lot of stuff. But as far as translating back to a sport, taking guys from UFC and seeing what sport they might be the best in.
Or if you just took LeBron James as a kid and he did jiu-jitsu and kickboxing instead of playing basketball, would he be the best?
I think that would have been the case with football. I think he would have been the best tight end of all time.
You could put him in anything.
Yeah, anything. He would have been the best.
Because Sean Strickland said something about Americans are a bunch of pussies because that's why we don't have many champs here, because we're so privileged and whatever. And I think, okay, maybe that plays a role into it, but I think the bigger thing is in America, we lose athletes to football, baseball, basketball.
I think you're onto something.
Rather than these other countries, it's like...
I think you're onto something.
Fighting or soccer or like cricket or something else.
So basically you're saying United States, whatever sport we go into, we are the greatest. I mean, it's just... From a
resource and training standpoint, I feel like we probably have the most resources.
I think it's true.
And then soccer, we just completely fall off the ledge.
What happened to soccer?
Which is everybody else's biggest sport.
The most athletic men are not in America. Typically, I would say, are not choosing to play soccer.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're getting shuffled in all these other sports. I guess we have more options here, which, like in Brazil, you're gonna play soccer or you're gonna do jiu-jitsu. I feel like
that's true.
For the most, there's other things that people are gonna do, but for the most, the biggest athletes are doing these things.
Yeah, we're certainly groomed to do baseball more than anything. Yeah, if in the Midwest we were, at least. Yeah. Like I watched pretty much everybody from my town or neighborhood play baseball until say 8, and then maybe they chose something else.
What's the most popular sport, football or baseball?
I think watching it's got to be football, but playing
what that earns the most? You think football earns the most? Highest earning?
Probably I would say.
Yeah.
That's crazy because there's only 16 regular season games.
But what's 17 now? But yeah.
What's the most popular as a kid? Like, if you did
everybody's playing basketball. I feel like
basketball.
I played basketball in
America. Yeah.
I don't know. That is a tough question. We'd put it in the comments, y'all.
Yeah.
Hey, with all of our hundreds of thousands of viewers, we'd love to hear your feedback. Let's get this topic flowing. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
That's a good question. About that.
It's like if LeBron or like one of the mega athletes decided to fight, what would they do?
Oh, I mean, Kevin Durant. I wonder what Kevin Durant's reach is. Yeah. I mean,
dude, LeBron James is 6'9".
Yeah. 280.
250.
Oh, okay.
He wouldn't even have to cut.
There you go. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Maybe even
Dude, he could cut to 205.
That's all I was gonna say. Shit. Yeah.
6'9", 205.
Imagine what's coming up in the future too, because the athletes are only getting bigger, stronger, faster.
I think too with other sports, lifting is such a key. Whereas like with MMA, it seems like it's always kind of been a little off to the side.
Because the skill, it's more of a you have to learn these techniques. Yeah, is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Football is like strength and speed. Like how fast do you run? Yeah. How high do you jump? How much do you bench press?
Yeah.
Man, I like that topic. That's a good one. That's a good one to roll with.
I have a couple notes on here. Let's see.
How do you guys feel about Francis Ngannou being released?
Oh yeah. Francis Ngannou no longer with the UFC.
Sounds like he wants to box.
I saw a thing Dana White said that Francis wants to make. He's willing to fight lesser opponents for more money, is what he's going to have the option to do. I guess if he becomes a free agent, so that's what he thinks he'll do.
If he fights Fury, I know they talked about that. That's a huge moneymaker. He's got no chance unless they change the rules.
Yeah. But or what if he signs with the PFL?
Ooh.
Could you imagine?
Ooh.
I'm like an avid UFC fan and MMA fan, but I do not watch any other organization. I don't. Like Bellator is great and all. I'll watch the clips.
Yeah,
I do not tune in for anything else.
But it seems like the UFC has lost a little bit of steam in the last month, you'd say, or no? With all the Dana White stuff.
I feel like there's just haven't been fights in the last.
Well, they do it every year, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the slow time.
But it's definitely not been a good month for the UFC.
No.
Oh, the longer it goes without Sugar fighting, I mean, we're just going to continue to drop.
Yeah. Hopefully he fights in March.
Hell yeah. That would be dope. So maybe, we haven't talked much. I've been getting some feedback about learning more about hearing us talk a little bit more. I think we did a pilot episode that never got released where we kind of talked about who each one of us is. And I kind of wanted to hear the Levi story again. If you're down for that. So you grew up in West Virginia.
So I was born in West Virginia and I was there until 15. And then from probably 10 years old till 15 years old, I traveled south every summer to play baseball. And then...
Would you live there?
Mostly we just drove every weekend. Sometimes I would go and stay with like a family for a couple weeks. But for the most part, I would wake up, go to school normal Friday. My parents would pick me up from school on Friday, air mattress in the back of a Expedition. And then we would head south Like normally probably 6-hour drive. Sometimes it would be like 12. And
your parents both had full-time jobs also, right?
Yeah.
That's
but
incredible.
My mom didn't work for a little bit, but for the most part, they had jobs the whole time.
So they go back and report back to work, and you'd go back to school on Monday after that.
Yeah, so we would leave on Friday, and then sometimes we would play Friday night, and then if that was the case, they would check me out of school early, and then play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, drive home Sunday night. If we got home like super late, then we wouldn't go to school, but they would still go to work. But for the most part, we always just went to school and work. And
that's amazing. I was talking to somebody the other day that didn't realize that you couldn't just, for example, try out for high school baseball and just step onto the team and just start playing. Would you say that's true now of anybody who wants to have any chance of making a pro, that you're going to have that kind of time, effort and all that kind of stuff, sacrifice?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be outliers, like freak athletes that maybe played something else and then they can transition over later, and that'll always happen, but it's going to be more rare because kids are becoming specialized like so much younger. But I think there's a negative aspect to specializing like too young, where you almost lose athletic ability because you're so focused on one thing.
You're saying like overall athletic ability?
Yeah. I think when you're young, you should probably play at least 2 sports, maybe 3 or even 4. But as you probably high school on, then you can kind of focus in on one.
Yeah, I saw a study. I think it was like the kids that played one sport growing up versus the kids who did multi-sports. It was something like 70% of those kids ended up needing some type of surgery or had some type of severe injury. So there's a huge difference.
Yeah. I don't know. I go back and forth on like the overuse thing. I think maybe it's overuse in one area. Like if you transition, because some people say, well, you need like one season where you're not doing anything. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But for me, I started specializing like as soon as high school started. I was already receiving offers from colleges before I even got to high school. So we already knew at that point that like I was going to be going to college at least for baseball.
And then you also are playing football. You were recruited for football too, right?
Yeah, early on. And then my brother had 1 year he had his right shoulder, I think. The next year his left shoulder surgeries. And that's when I was like, man, if that happens to me in football, like my baseball is going to be over. So that's when I decided I'm going to focus on one thing. And then that's when I made the move to IMG as well. So at IMG, you can play 2 sports, but it's much more difficult because the level is so much higher.
Heck yeah. So IMG, that happened, and how old were you when you ended up going out there?
I had just turned 16. So the summer before that, I played for this team called FTB in where were they out of? I think Miami area, maybe Orlando, I can't remember. So I played on that travel team, and I realized the speed of the game was much faster. And there was a kid, Alex Sanchez was his name. They lived in Jacksonville, and his dad was a doctor in that area. And he said, you can come down here and play at our high school, and you can stay with us during the season, and then just go back home when baseball season's over and be with your family. And I thought about that for a little bit, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like I could just go to IMG.
Yeah.
But IMG's super expensive. So I called them and I explained like my family's not, we always had like, we were comfortable, but not like super rich. So, and IMG was like $75,000, maybe $80,000 at the time per year to go there.
That's crazy.
So I called them, and at the time I was like the top guy in my draft class. And I told them like, hey, I want to come to IMG. My parents had no clue that I even called IMG. And they were like, oh, we were going to reach out to you next year. We actually saw you pitch this summer in Florida, and we were going to wait a year. But if you want to come now, I'm sure we can make it work. So I told my parents. My parents were like, no way. And I was like, yeah, they want us to come down next weekend to visit the campus. Wow. My parents still hadn't talked to anybody from IMG. And I told them to email me so I could show my parents, like, hey, this is for real. So they emailed me, and then that weekend we drove down. That was like in July, I think. So we drove down, visited the campus, and then I remember we went to Panera Bread, and my parents were like, if you want to be, we don't want you to come down here this early, and be away from the family. It's going to suck. You're going to be like 14 hours away from home at a young age and living on your own. Yeah. But if you want to chase like the dream that you say you want to, this is going to be the best thing for you.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, I want to go. And I just got my license too, but they're like, you can't bring your car. And I'm like, whatever, it's fine. Like, I want to go there.
Wowzers. So you're a quarterback too. And at one point colleges were looking at you, right?
Yeah. So my first year at IMG, I just did baseball. And then my junior year, I was like, I miss football. I want to play football. And I was telling my dad, like, I'm telling you, I can go play football really wherever I want. And my dad kind of thought it was whatever. And I was like, this weekend, Marshall wants us to come on a football visit, not baseball. Because I just wanted to prove, like, hey, I didn't even play football last year, but I'm still good enough to get offers from these schools.
Crazy.
And my dad was like, no way. So we went to Marshall, just like, my dad thought the whole visit was bullshit. And I went, because we had went on baseball visits, but never just football.
Yeah.
And I didn't play football the year before. So he's like, no way. The school is not going to offer you when you didn't even play.
Yeah, right. I would have thought that too.
And the coach, like, we walked up to the coach's office, and Doc Holliday was the coach at the time. And he was like, he looked at me and he's like, are you Levi Kelly? And I was like, yeah. He's like, just had a meeting about you. And my dad was like, holy fuck, this is for real. Jeez. So then he was like, damn, this is for real. Like, maybe you can play football too. But then I just ended up deciding I think my agent or my advisor at the time decided or told me, like, hey man, I think you can be a high draft pick and play in the big leagues. So I don't think this is smart to, play football. And he was like, obviously you can play, and if something happens, you can always go back and play football. So I was just like, okay. Wow. Like, I still feel like now, maybe this sounds arrogant, but I feel like now if you gave me 6 months to a year, I could play like Power 5 quarterback.
Hell yeah.
But I even thought about that. Like, something happens with baseball, maybe I'll go play football in college.
First triple professional athlete of all time. That'd be unbelievable.
The person that I can think of most recently that did that, but even at a higher level, was Jameis Winston. He pitched at Florida State while he was playing quarterback.
Yeah,
there.
He threw hard too.
At a Heisman level.
There's been a few guys that did baseball and football, right?
Yeah.
Quarterbacks usually and pitchers.
Yeah.
I think in college it goes a little unnoticed in comparison to like at the big level, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of guys who do both.
That's incredible.
I ran a 40 at the Diamondbacks field last year and ran a 4.6. And that's like, I mean, right there with the top of the quarterbacks, I feel like. And I remember one time, probably 3 years ago, a bunch of the players were like, this is around the NFL Combine. They were saying, oh, how far do you think you can throw the football? And the guys were like 40 yards or whatever. And I'm just sitting there like, I don't know if I should say something or not. And I said like, oh, I bet I can throw it 60 yards. Yeah. And they're like, no fucking way. There's no way. People in the Combine aren't even throwing it 60 yards. And I said, you want to bet? And they were like $300. And I was like, damn. Okay. And we went out there and I chucked 60. That thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I want to hear what you're going to say.
It's just similar. Like, I throw for a living. So anything that's going to be throwing, like, I feel like I can figure it out,
Yeah. That'd be something to be, like, even to try to play on a pro team. Like, there's other pro football leagues, too, right?
Yeah.
There's, what is it called? Arena football?
Yeah, arena football. We got a team out here, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be dope, man, if you just popped in there and played a quick season.
Yeah, it would be fun. There's a lot probably now. The game's probably changed so much since I played. But I feel like I could figure it out.
Yeah.
just like reading the defenses and stuff like that would probably take me some time to get back into the swing of things.
That's so amazing. So when you're at IMG, I'd really like to hear what did a typical day look like there? Were you doing things like training for the combine or training for like, were things geared up that way? Like how did a typical day look like there?
Well, in the fall, so there was there's like the off season, which is from the time school starts. It's like fall and then off season. So from school starts until like January, that's one phase, and then January till the end of the year, that's like baseball season. So the first part of the school year, the first semester, whatever it's called, was more like development, strength conditioning, how do we get better for the season. Yeah. And then once we got in season, it was more just, okay, now we want to win games, and it's more about like the team and like developing, but the focus is more on performing and winning.
I got you.
But a typical day would be school from like 7. I think we started at 7:30 till 12, and then sport would start. So you would school from 7:30 to 12, and then you're
just doing like math and science and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you would have 3 classes a day if you had a full schedule. I think every year except my senior year, I had 3 one day and 2 the next. And then if you had an off, as long as you had above a 3.0, you could just go back to the dorm.
Nice.
So go to school, and then lunch, and all the food is pretty healthy. Nutritionists like work with us and kind of show us what to eat and what our plate should look like. Pretty generic stuff, but good for high school level. And then sport would start at 1:15. You would go like your rehab stuff, very similar to how it is in pro ball, like rehab stuff, warming up. And then baseball practice started at like 2. That would run from like 2 to 4. And then if you lift, you would lift like 4:30 to 5:30, grab dinner.
Every day?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the off season, it would be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
And your gym looked like training at.
Yeah, it's probably best in the world, I would say.
Wow.
I've never been to a college that has a nicer facility than IMG as far as weight room goes.
That's amazing.
And then you would finish lift at 5:30. Sometimes you would have speed class after lifting.
Speed class?
So
what's that look like?
Like just working on running mechanics stuff.
Yeah.
So sometimes
you'd have stuff tied to your back, like things like that?
Yeah, a lot of work on the wall too, like there's a lot that went into that. Right. Sometimes you would have like vision class where they would be doing these vision drills for you. What? Some days would be yoga. So you always had something specialized after lifting at least twice a week.
He's just like, it just happened. It's just a normal thing. I went to school. We did vision things. Well, I'm really interested. Like, I could geek out on just about everything you said, but I want to know what the vision training was like. What happened in that?
So I don't remember a ton of it. A lot of it was the one takeaway that I remember was not to be, because as a hitter, they're always laser focused on like the pitcher's arm, but not to look at something for nonstop for like the whole time. To kind of keep it soft and then right at the last second and then lock in on it.
Wow.
I remember that. And then they would do like reaction stuff where we'd be like, there was this huge black board with these sensors all over it, and you would put your nose up on the board and you would see the sensors in your peripheral, and when they would turn on, you would have to slap them.
Wow.
So there was a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. And this brings me back to the LeBron question is, when you're training at a young age and being brought up doing these incredible athletic drills and things like that, this is going to give you a huge advantage no matter what you do later in life. You know what I mean? That's it, and maybe you're born like LeBron James, you're born with incredible genetics, but LeBron also at a very early age was probably brought into some very high level training like that, and has continued. I think people don't realize, Dana knows a lot about this probably, is how much goes in every year to all of his things that he does outside of basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, As far as basketball goes, I think that's like a sport that you can do year round, and you really don't need to you don't have to let up. Like, we kind of did it in baseball. Levi still does that, where it's like, it's still kind of year round, but with basketball, these guys are balling all the time, all the way through the summer. So,
yeah.
Man, that makes sense.
Yeah, they don't stop.
I forget what I was going to say. Oh, I think being a young kid and doing the training stuff, you become so good at seeing a movement or seeing something and then telling your body to do it.
Wow.
So you've seen, okay, I watched somebody jump this way, I'm going to jump that way.
Right.
So you learn, like, it's almost like a muscle. You strengthen that muscle of seeing a movement and then telling your body to do a movement. Like jiu-jitsu, I can see a move.
Yep.
And because I trained like an athlete for so long, it doesn't take me as long for my body to like get it down.
Yeah, no, I can attest to that. I've seen how quickly you learn things in there. It's crazy, actually.
And you see other athletes from other sports that come in and they do the same thing.
It's like, true. You're right.
A person that's been an athlete from young to now they're an adult, they come into this and they catch, like Matt, the guy.
Yep.
I knew he was an athlete because you're like, this dude's getting good fast.
He's one of the fastest I've ever seen pick up stuff. He got stuff real fast. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you got me. I'm a little and it kind of shows you what does go into this stuff. But when I get chemoed out, they call it chemo brain.
Yeah.
I'm just not. You know, I could hear it a million times. Some of it's learning style. I think a lot of it's you're probably trained in all of the three major, the auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. You're probably strong also in all three of those areas, which is such a power when you're learning sports, I think.
Right. You're a better athlete than you think because I saw you play basketball.
Well, I actually think I am the greatest athlete in the world. I mean, if you know, I'm a world record holder and I can do all the things I do. Let's stick on Levi right now.
But yeah, I just think that's why I'm so passionate about sports in general, or is just because even if you're not going to be a pro or whatever, you're trying to become better at something.
Yeah.
So typically that's going to make your whole life better, regardless if you end up being an athlete or not, like later on, because you want to be a good basketball player at 6 years old. You're going to do certain things to make you better at that. That's also going to make you better, like person,
True.
Father, all these 100%. Other things.
100%. Man, that's a good word right there. Yeah, your parents have been hearing about them, and I feel like I almost know them, but I've kind of communicated with your dad a little bit through social media, and kind of, you kind of see them on, and I hear about them a lot through you, but they've been a huge encouragement to me of reminding me how important it is to put that time into your kids. I've been really working on the last 6 months or so of trying to put time into each kid, like their passion, and knowing that it gets tough sometimes. It's kind of like, well, they're never going to be a pro out,
right.
And what it actually does for their life later on, and giving them options. And more than that, I think personally, I think every kid should be doing some kind of sport and exercise.
I think Tim talks about this a lot, is you see people build confidence in the gym a lot because they become better at it. They might not ever be a jiu-jitsu world champion. They might not ever win a jiu-jitsu tournament, but they can tell that they're becoming better at it. So that right there just gives them confidence. It's like I was bad at this and I worked hard and then I became better. Ooh, so now good. I realize, okay, everything that I'm bad at first, as long as I do this, which is typically working hard or some sort of hardship, I'm going to get better at it. And once a kid can understand, okay, I go from sucking to a lot of work to pretty good or even great, you almost become like addicted with that. Or at least I did. It's always like, okay, these kids right here, they're better than me right now, but I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then I'm going to be better than them. My dad would always, he would always put me on, this is going to sound maybe, I don't know, bad or whatever, but he would always put me on the best team. And I would always go to these teams from these other states, and nobody would know who I was. And I would always start on the team hitting ninth, which is the last hitter in the lineups, typically the worst guy, especially when you're playing Little League and stuff like that. And I would play like left or right field, which was always like the worst guy. Yeah. And then eventually I would be playing shortstop or center field and hitting third and pitching the most. And when I was that, he would make me leave that team. Not make me, but he would put me on the next best team. Next level. And on that team, I would be hitting ninth, playing right field.
Crazy.
And it was like 5, 6, 7 teams. I would go from the worst guy. Or like, okay, you're going to be in the worst position.
Love it.
And then by the time you're hitting third and you're the best guy, you've outgrown this team, we're going to go to the next team. So it started in West Virginia. So then I went to Virginia, and then I went to South Carolina, and then I went to Florida. And then Florida's like the best baseball in this country. Yeah. So, I mean, Florida, Texas, and Arizona and California, probably the best 4 places.
Hey, don't forget about Illinois. There's a lot of people coming out of Chicago, bro.
Them boys can't play.
Chicago Catholic League. Hey, we come to Florida and bro, we won tournaments in Florida.
No, I know a lot of players from Illinois that are good.
Man,
we came to Florida to take these teams.
Alec Thomas, one of our top prospects, is from, and my roommate at IMG is from Chicago too. So surprising that they can play though, because it's cold.
I was gonna say though that what he said is really true, and I watched it happen. You'd see it happen, like, because you play, if you play in really good teams. I don't know if you played in BPA or what leagues you would play in when you were younger, but you'd see that on teams every year. Like the best player from this team was all of a sudden now on the best team in the tournament, who they might finish, their team gets kicked out in the first round or something. You see the best player on that team literally playing for the team that's gonna probably win the championship.
Yeah,
and they do that same.
I would
thing.
play these teams too. I was always like getting free gear and stuff because I would tell them I'm gonna play with them, and then I wouldn't, and I would get all these free shoes. Also, it was sick. Like, yeah,
you were probably pitching too that whole time, right?
Yeah, dude. I would literally, once I was 15 and older, I would fly in on Friday, pitch on Saturday. The tournament wouldn't be over until like 6 more days, but I would fly home. And then maybe if they made playoffs, they would fly me back in, and I would pitch and fly back.
Jesus,
that's crazy.
And the local parents would get mad because they're like, this kid's coming in and he's taking innings from our kid that's at practice every week and all this. But me, I was just like, I don't care. I'm here to throw, and that's it.
Yeah.
Did your dad train you much? Did he, besides probably just playing catch, was he working with you a lot?
Yeah. I mean, he built, I remember I was 12 or 11 or 12, and he built a whole indoor batting cage at our house.
What? He built it himself?
No, he hired people to build it.
That's incredible.
We were at a tournament, and he saw a building, an indoor facility with turf, and he was like, I'm going to have that next year at the house.
That's amazing. Was your dad a huge baseball fan growing up and things?
No, I think my dad was the kid when he was coming up that didn't have the resources and the opportunity.
West Virginia?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he was like, that's not going to happen for my kid.
Yeah.
My kid's, maybe he won't be the best, but he's going to have the best chance because he's going to have the resources.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So what kind of work did he do then? What was he doing to finance a lot of this stuff?
He was I think he was superintendent at this company, and then he also opened up a trucking company so the company he worked for was West Virginia Paving, and he still works for them, but he opened up a trucking company basically just to pay for my travel ball.
Wow.
And because as soon as I stopped playing travel ball, they stopped doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did he get into that work though? Like it was like more of the paving sort of thing.
Yeah, he just started when he got out of the military, he started as the bottom guy that was like working on the crane or whatever, loading the material off the bridges, making like not a lot of money. Now he's like almost the head of the company.
Just hustled.
So just 20. I mean, he's been there like 28 years.
Wow.
He actually left and watched because he was like, I'm not missing any of your senior year. So he retired my junior year, watched my whole senior year, and went back to work after the draft.
Wowzers. And he's got some check out Don't Blink Adventures. That's what it is. He's got some pretty cool. He's a drone meister. He puts together some pretty good drone stuff. I love watching those.
Yeah,
that's incredible. And your mom, her family background is from Iceland.
Iceland,
right?
Yeah. So my mom's side is from Iceland. We still have family over there. My mom was a big athlete too, at least from what I've heard from her. That she was a big time softball player, and her brother was a big time boxer. He was like 15 years old, I think, won the Gold Gloves in West Virginia, and he's like the only one in West Virginia to win it in 3 different weight divisions.
Wow.
So he was that side of the family is super athletic. Yeah. And my dad's side was more, that's where I get like the grit and the hard work and stuff like that is my dad's side, but the athleticism probably my mom's side.
That's awesome. That's incredible. So you're at IMG, and then so those that check us out, you can kind of see who Taya is. That's Levi's girlfriend, and so when did you guys meet? How did you end up getting together? You've been together a while, right?
Yeah. So the year I left IMG my junior year, because I wanted to play football.
Yeah.
And they also wanted me to play. There was a little bit of controversial stuff. They told me I could bring my car, and then they told me, no, you can't bring your car. And then
once you get in trouble.
Yeah. They just wanted, because I was like, I didn't know if I was going to go back there because my family had moved to Florida at this time. So I was like, I'm in Florida now. I can play anywhere. Like, I don't have to be away from home because I'm in the state of Florida. That's ultimately what I needed, was to be in a baseball state. So they didn't let me bring my car. I wanted to play football, and they wanted me to play fall baseball, and I didn't want to because I was like, I want to play football. And so I left IMG and went to her high school. And then we met, like, even before I was even there, we met. And we were together, like, maybe 2 months after that.
Not even.
Yeah, not long after that. And basically been together ever since then, obviously on and off some parts of it. But for the most part, we've been together.
I can't wait to have Taya on. We got to have Taya on as a guest. Taya does modeling. If you check her page out, you're just going to get sucked right into that whole thing. It's incredible. She's also been working. We're so grateful. I think I mentioned before, we're shooting in the Recharge Center location where Soul Fighters, it's a whole kind of community center type of thing. And our business has been open 8 months, and it's growing. We've set our goals. I think we've exceeded where I expected us to be in 8 months. But of course, with any business starting kind of from scratch, small business, there's going to be some challenges, and especially with the illness. And, Ara's area is the kitchen, my area is the rest of the business, and we had to learn not to cross one another's spots. But Taya and Levi have helped us so much. My parents have said the other day, they've been like angels for us coming through when times did get rough. And Taya's been helping Ara cook in the kitchen. She cooks as well. She's been just an incredible help to the business, like connecting with the clients. And Levi's got a pretty good business mind. He's somebody that I can throw ideas off of, or I remember a few months back, I was like, what the heck? That's a great idea. Or like, he'll just pop in ideas. Do you think your time at IMG kind of built your business knowledge up a little bit, or was it you kind of went into business yourself too, right, at a pretty young age?
Yeah, I always was a hustler. I feel like I always knew, because my parents set such a good example of, if you want the X, Y, and Z, you have to put in this and you're going to get it. And I've also always been a sponge. Like, I listen to everybody because, I don't know, my dad's always told me, like, keep your mouth shut and your ears open. And he used to tell me, act like there's a frog in your mouth. Like, if you want to say something that you probably shouldn't, just act like there's a frog in your mouth. And if you open it, it's going to jump out, and you can't let it jump out of your mouth.
I like that.
So I've always just tried to listen, and even if I agree or disagree with whatever people are saying, I just try to absorb it and then think about it and does that make sense or not to me? Right. And I've done that with business, especially because like we've thought about opening up places together, even back home, and just kind of being in that world and thinking about opening up places. I've learned things along the way that I've shared.
Nice. And when you were 18, maybe talk about the draft experience and how you got an offer and all that kind of stuff. That's a great story.
And this is a long story.
We're ready.
So in freshman year of high school, I was like my dad's calling me right now, the number one like pitcher in the country. And then sophomore year, I broke my ankle the day after my sophomore season at IMG, but I played that summer on it anyway. And it hurt me a little bit, like my ranking for whatever that matters. Not much at that time, really. Went down, and then played my junior year, had a good junior year at Bishop Rowe, a really good junior year, and then got in a car accident and played my junior summer before the draft with my SI was all messed up, which has led me to understand like pelvis stuff and all the strength conditioning stuff. But I played that summer with a blown SI, which killed me in the draft because that's the most important summer. And then my senior, I had a good senior year as well. Just not enough time to like catch back up to where I was. But I knew I wanted to sign pro. LSU had a pretty good idea of that. So they over recruited, I felt like, because they knew a couple of us were going to sign. So then the draft happened. My whole senior year, scouts are there nonstop. One of the most important outings I felt like was in California, and I threw really bad. So that didn't help me. But was still able to throw good enough to get picked. And a guy from West Virginia, actually, that impacted me like massively the whole way up. And he actually lives out of here now, was with the Diamondbacks at the time. And the Padres called me. So we thought I was going to get drafted to Tampa, like maybe late in the second or early in the third. And they didn't end up taking me. And my agent at the time had set a really high price for my ability at the time, like kind of herky-jerky righty that throws 95 in high school, kind of wild. So there's a lot of those. Or at least in my draft class, there was a lot of those. And I was old for the class. So Tampa didn't end up taking me, and we thought they were going to. And everybody else was like, your price tag's too high. So the Padres called in the 4th round, and they asked, and they were like, no, it's too high. They took somebody else. And then I remember I was like, fuck, I might actually have to go to school.
What was your price? Are you able to say what you guys were asking?
The original price, my agent said 7 figures will make it easy. And there was 2 teams interested at that. And then once those 2 teams didn't take me, I was kind of fucked.
Yeah.
So everybody was off me. After those 2 teams took somebody else, I was kind of shit out of luck.
Yeah.
So, and my agent there was just a disconnect because my previous, the partner I was with passed away like 3 months before the draft. So I was thrown to his other guy that I didn't have we had a good relationship, but it just wasn't the same. He didn't know me that well. So there was a disconnect in communication. He didn't know how bad I wanted to sign. So that kind of jangled things up too. But then I just text a couple of teams like, hey, I want to sign. And JR called me and he was like, we don't know when we're going to take you, but we're going to take you at some point today. That was like in the 5th round. And then they didn't take me in the 5th. They didn't take me in the 6th.
Ooh.
And they didn't take me in the
they didn't
take me in the 7th. And we were sitting there every time the Diamondbacks came up, we were like, I'm about to go.
Wow.
And then they didn't take me in the 3 next rounds, but they took college seniors. So I was like, they're setting it up because college seniors they sign for way less money. And they knew I wanted more than slot because slot was like 170 and I wasn't going to sign for that. And Jared just called me. He was like, all right, we're going to take you. and they took me in the 8th, and then we figured it all out.
Nice.
And I thought JR, like me having JR in my corner with the Diamondbacks was like valuable too. So that held like a money value to me in my head. And so then I just signed with them, and so that was 2018, and now it's 2023. So I'm still with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah. So you were 18 years old, and you're getting this huge. All of a sudden, you got this huge financial stuff. What stopped you from just running through it all?
Well, I just turned 19.
Oh, 19. Gotcha.
I was an older senior. As soon as I got drafted, as soon as the money hit my account, literally the day that it hit my account, I bought a brand new Camaro. So it didn't stop me from doing too much crazy stuff at the beginning. But I remember my rookie year, the first half, you kind of get drafted during the middle of the season, so you play the second half. But a lot of times with pitchers, they won't have you throw. So I was literally out here with a good amount of money, a brand new Camaro, and I wasn't playing. So there was a lot of free time.
Right.
And luckily, I didn't get too... I was like pretty disciplined at the time, not to the extent now. Obviously, I did my fair share of stupid things, but I was never like crazy because I always wanted to give it everything I had at the field, and I always worked harder than everyone, I felt. So in order to do that, I had to take care of myself. But I still did, like I was still going out here and there at that time. And then that off season, they told me, hey, everybody goes to Hillsboro, which is our what was that, short season.
Here's Hillsboro Hops in Oregon.
They said every high school pitcher goes to Hillsboro. And I was like, I'm not going to fucking Hillsboro. Like, I'm going to skip Hillsboro and I'm going to go to Low A. And they're like, no, that hasn't happened since 2010. All my buddies, you're crazy. And I was like, I'm going to watch and see. I seen you guys play, and I'm telling you, I'm going to fucking Kane County, which was single A at the time. And then I found Jocko and David Goggins that same time that all these kids were telling me I was going to Hillsboro the next year. If I was lucky, maybe I'll go to Missoula, which is even worse. And I found Jocko and Goggins, and that's when I freaking dialed into the tee. I was waking up at like 4:30 in the morning, every single morning in the off season. I remember I would sleep on the ground.
Wow. Just
to like, stupid. But my buddy he was doing the same thing, and it was just like, I know I can choose. My mindset at the time was, I know I can choose to sleep in the bed, but I'm going to be comfortable sleeping on the floor.
Wow.
Because in my head, like, pussy sleep in bed. So I was trying to be some tough guy or whatever. But that transitioned me into like super discipline.
Yeah.
Where I wasn't doing anything that I thought at the time negatively affected my career. Obviously, that's kind of what's led me down this whole path of like health and wellness and stuff. It started as like a Jocko, David Goggins disciple.
That's so cool.
And then turned into what it is now.
It's almost like you start making that a habit, and you sort of fall in love with that element of like a warrior lifestyle. Sort of.
Yeah, I was just chasing like discomfort for whatever reason. And I had a buddy at the time that was doing the same thing, so I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Which it helped me a lot, but at the end of the day, David Goggins, or especially Goggins, that's the one I was more into, which was like the reason why I was sleeping on the floor and shit, was because he does crazy shit like that.
Yeah.
I had to learn that David Goggins isn't a professional athlete, you know?
Right, that's true.
He runs and shit, but if you look at his feet, he's all fucked up. So,
yeah.
Which is probably what's led me to my injury and stuff like that, was the grind nonstop.
Right.
Which is better than being a shithead lazy, in my opinion. But there's definitely like a balance, and there's an evolution to that, I feel like, especially in athletics.
Yeah. I've always wondered that I always like to ask the top athletes. I was kind of talking to Sugar about this a few months back, is I really feel like the top level athletes at some point they really put some time in to just grind. Maybe it was a year of like when Sugar had to be out for 2 years, he really came back transformed muscle wise. So he just grinded out that, too far in that area, but it carried on to the rest of his career.
I remember even last year in the off season, I would like bike 20 and 30 miles a day, just as like, I don't even know why I was doing it really.
Yeah.
But it was that like I was just chasing the discomfort because I knew there was growth in that. But I think you have to evolve from that, because especially in baseball, like I'm not trying to be a triathlete or whatever, like a marathon person or a power lifter. If I'm going to go super crazy on lifting heavy, or I'm not trying to be like a sprinter. I'm trying to be a baseball player.
Right.
So to understand the limitations and the things you have to do to become a baseball player, not necessarily like the best like physical health. I was talking to Tay about that. Is a lot of the time I spend in the gym is fixing stuff that throwing messes up, which is just part of it. It's just part of being a athlete, I feel like. But I'm like super interested in training people that play sports, and I can do all that, but also people that are just going for overall human performance, because there's no limitation to that. Right. Where it's like, if I'm going to train you and you just want to be as healthy and as like feel as good as you possibly can. There's no like, hey, we got to watch this because you have to pitch tomorrow. Right. It's just, hey, we're going to program this as good as we can because your number one goal is just to feel great. Right. Yeah. Which I think is cool. Like, that's when things can get super, super creative in the weight room and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of fun there. So you kind of touched on some stuff. You kind of put yourself into that grind because you kind of innately knew that you were preparing for war ahead, maybe as a fighter or whatever. What can you think of a time when you really went into maybe a almost a spot of just darkness or hopelessness, like into that untapped spot?
Oh gosh.
Like a really, maybe it was a time when you just really were like, what is life? Like just a dark spot.
Yeah, I think with my injury, I did a pretty good job of managing that, I felt like. But now looking back, it's like, man, I kind of was scuffling there for a little bit. But I channeled that in the proper way. I feel like maybe not the best way for baseball, but to change my life and benefit my life when baseball wasn't, it just wasn't working because of the injury. Right. Like I channeled all that energy in jiu-jitsu and biking and hiking. And like right after I had surgery, I was mountain biking, and that was like my coping, instead of partying or drinking or alcohol or gambling or whatever, my coping was hiking, like putting myself through these gruesome exercises.
That's the solution right there. That's it. You had a car accident. Was that did that kind of shake you a little bit?
No. The car accident jacked my back up, which led me to learn about pelvic tilt and stuff like that, which is kind of beneficial. And
right on.
Which made me, like, the only thing I really think about the car accident was it fucked my baseball career for the time being, because I was trying to pitch with a blown out back. And so this time when my baseball career got fucked up because of the thoracic outlet or whatever, I had already been there. So it was like that prepared me for this. So that
good.
Was the biggest takeaway from that.
Oh, I know when it was. I know when you really got into a dark spot. It's that time when you had a little breakup from Tay or whatever. That's when but we know what you do. We know what you do though. You go to the exercise, the movement, that is the solution. That's what I found in my whole battle is that when things are, no matter what happens, no matter how bad it gets, I want to go to God. But it takes a movement. It takes an action to even go to God. And if you don't move, you could throw up all the prayers you want, but if you're not moving, you're not taking that action that God wants us to do to live healthy and to try to shake out of that darkness.
Right. I was talking to my buddy that wrestles in the AEW. Maybe we'll have him on the pod.
I'd love to have him on the pod.
But I was talking to him about that, and he was like, man, I spent so much time in the last 5, 6, 7 years reading and listening to podcasts and all these things. He was like, I'm not going to read right now, and I'm not going to listen to podcasts. Every time I want to read or listen to podcasts, I'm going to go to action, because I've spent so much time listening and learning. Like, at some point you have to flip the script and do what the podcast or the books are telling you to do.
Good word.
Because you can sit there and you can be super knowledgeable on it.
Yeah.
You can be super knowledgeable about God. You can know God and understand everything about it. But until you go and put it into action, it's kind of useless.
There's a sermon right there.
That's kind of what the guy today at Impact Church was talking about, was just like, it's time to get into action. Like,
love that message.
Everybody is saying I identify as a dog, or I identify as whatever. He's like, I identify as a Christian, like, or I talk about your beliefs, whatever they are.
Right.
And maybe not instead. You can post whatever the hell you want. You can identify as whatever you want, but any of that. But don't be afraid to just be open about whatever you're about.
I love it.
And I think I wrote this down too. He was talking about how like being one of one, like we're all one of one.
Yeah.
And if I'm trying to be like Kyle, then I'm no longer one of one. I'm one of two, because I'm basically Kyle Jr.
Yeah.
Which now I'm one of two, so that makes me less rare.
Right.
Which makes you essentially less valuable. So in order to be the most valuable person, you have to be your true, genuine self, because that's the only time you're one of one.
Wow.
If I'm trying to be like whoever celebrity, then now I'm no longer one of one. I'm trying to be this person. So I'm basically their, like, if we think player cards, like I'm their chrome refractor, whatever card, rather than the gold one of one piece, which sells for the gold one of one is going to sell for much more than the one of 50 that there's 50 other ones. That's
nice. That's good. I think you're making me think too. I'm kind of been studying the words of Jesus a lot, and he talks a lot about he was really harsh against religion. And when you have even the label Christian or Muslim or something, you've got a label there that makes you no longer, when you're saying this, it's making me think you're no longer one of one, because you're set into a box sort of whatever that definition, and that definition has a different meaning, but maybe that definition is a certain way and pressure at a certain group of people in a certain church. And Jesus was very adamant about not falling into those religious traps. There was in the Bible, there's no word that describes who people were that did fall. At the time you had people following Jesus, but to be set into a religious thing, and I don't see any evidence in the Bible of that.
Yeah. There was we were back in Florida, we went to this New Year's Eve. 4th of July, it's freaking 45 degrees outside. New Year's Eve thing, and there was this group of like 5 people with their poster boards saying, "You're going to hell. You need Jesus. You're going to hell if you don't commit to Jesus. If you ignore me, you're ignoring God." And he had freaking money, printed money. On the face of it was a dollar bill, and on the back end of it was like some sermon thing, and he was acting like it was money, trying to give it to people, so when they turned it over, it was like their church thing. And I'm like, bro, you think that like essentially what we're trying to do is to be as close as we can, at least this way my mindset is, like, you're trying to be, Jesus was the example, you're trying to be as much as as close as to him as you can be. And with like knowing that you're not going to live up to that.
Right.
But as long as you strive for that, then you're probably moving in the right direction. Yeah. Do you think that he was out there with a poster board saying, "You need me, and if you don't have me, you're going to hell"? Like, I'm like, what are these people doing?
Good word.
And they had this young kid out there doing it, and he doesn't even know, like, not even old enough to even understand any of it. And he's out there yelling at these people. I'm like, what the hell are we doing here? That's
frustrating because it also goes the other way too. People that I feel could really use an understanding of the Bible or God in their life and knowing who Jesus is. That is now their definition, their box definition for Christian.
Right.
And that and if the devil's real, I don't think he has any power but to lie. That's probably a pretty good setup he has to get people not to be able to look into what the Bible actually says and to make their own little false stereotype of what that box is.
Right. Well, I think it's just like anything, like until you dive into something. If I'm going to go say I want to be a ballerina, and maybe today I can say I can be a ballerina, but tomorrow I go to ballerina class and I realize, wow, this is way more in depth than I even thought. So until you've ventured into that lane, like you're not going to have an understanding of any of it. Like you don't even understand. You just see the Christian on the side of the road telling you you're going to hell. So that's what you know until you've been. Now you go to this one church and you go to this church and the guy's saying the same thing. Then you go to this other church and the guy's saying the same thing. So you haven't experienced, you haven't even seen this powerful message or this light. All you've seen is these people yelling. So that's your only thing that you can go back to. So it's almost like an, I don't want to say ignorance, but kind of like an ignorance because you haven't been like educated in that area.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that's really it. Is like, you're not educated in that area. So you don't really have I believe what I believe because of my experience.
Right.
And who am I to say what you should believe because you've had a whole different experience than I have.
Yeah.
I'm going to try my best to tell you my experience and what has happened in my life in order to help you. But if you choose otherwise, then that's cool too. Like I'm not any greater than you. So I'll hear your message too. And if that impacts me, then I'll take the good that I think and I'll throw the rest out and move along.
I think that's the character of Jesus there, because Jesus talked a lot about not thinking that we're better than somebody else. Jesus lived such a humble life. One of his top characteristics, if you study who he was very humble. And people that did follow him, he said, don't think of yourself better than your other brother or sister. Think of yourself as maybe, you check yourself out first. That is much more productive in connecting with somebody, actually building a relationship. And it really bugs me. It hurts my heart because I see more and more religious institutions popping up on us. Like every street corner has something now. And a lot of these are very in your face and set up in religious hierarchies where it's sucking people into that culture of church because people are so lonely. They don't have a belonging. And if they get loved on a little bit and feel like they're part of something and they feel like, hey, now I am doing something righteous, I am doing something good in my life, but they're just being pulled into this exhausting sort of culture and community. And it really frustrates me.
I think it goes back to like, I try to keep it super basic and just say, okay, are your intentions good or are your intentions bad?
Yeah, that's nice.
No matter what you believe, if you have good intentions, then I'm probably going to like you.
Yeah.
And if you have bad intentions, I'm probably not going to like you. Maybe you'll trick me here and there, but eventually over a long period of time, somebody's true intentions will come out and then you'll be able to see like, this person has good intentions or bad. And maybe they think X, Y, and Z, but their intentions are still good. They're trying to do good for people. So that's cool.
That's a good one because I feel like when I'm looking at that, what's bugging me right now is that it's usually I want to think to myself, hey, they're well intended, that person out in the, with the poster boards and yelling, you're going to go to hell if you don't do this. But man, I lost my train of thought. And it was a good
Their
one.
intention.
Yeah, their intentions, their intentions are bad at the root, because I found over time checking out different churches, I've been on both ends of being in the ministry and a pastor and being in a lot of different churches, is it usually uncovers the intentions are either power, to be up somewhere in the hierarchy, to have a status of power, or it's going to be money. Is it, when it comes down to it, it's just like, how much money can we raise? How much money can we get?
Right. It's like, who are you? I always think, who are you? Is the pastor your God? Or is God your God?
Good word.
Or is even going into sports, like, is your coach your God, or is like God your God? Because if your coach is your God, then that's a lot of pressure.
Oof.
Or like, is Dana White your God? Because if you're fighting and Dana White's your God, that's a lot of pressure to fight under.
Really good.
Maybe you don't say that that's the case, but if that is like, if you really care like that much about his opinion, then essentially you're worship. Same thing with like me with the Diamondbacks GM. Like Mike Hazen, is Mike Hazen my God? Because if he is, then when Mike Hazen comes around, it's going to be a lot of pressure for me to throw.
Right.
Because it's like, holy shit,
Yeah.
And I think athletes, they fall, even myself, I fell into that. It's like you put these people on pedestals because as a kid, they're like, oh my gosh, this person knows so much, this, that, and these people are smart, but they're not like somebody you should worship.
No, 100%. They might be super. I see this in the jiu-jitsu world a lot. They might be super skilled in one area that's incredibly impressive, but that doesn't mean they're good in every other area. I think that what is that jiu-jitsu or whatever it is that's supposed to be coming out. I'm excited to see that whole documentary that's coming out.
You see in strength coaches a lot too, I think, because strength coaches are strong and supposed to be these strong and tough guys, whatever, big scary dudes, and then they're a coach, so they're used to telling people what to do and people do it, and then a lot of times if they don't do it, they punish them. So essentially, you're a godlike figure, and guys run away with that, like that. They believe it, like almost a lot of strength coaches believe they're like this superhero type character.
I can't believe how I've seen in the last years. I thought, since I believe we're the science and everything, and it's becoming, I just saw a stat where it's becoming more and more of a high paying job as being a trainer in some sort of exercise or athletic field. Is I can't believe how many trainers I see that just not to be not in shape themselves. They're I don't expect every single person to be a six pack, but at least are you able to achieve that yourself? Are you and I see again and again, I'll be in a gym and I'll look at personal trainers. You have one in the spectrum. You got a guy that might be juicing and is just totally, but then you got a lot of people in there that just aren't in shape, or even strength and conditioning coaches that I see at the top level sports. And you can probably speak on that more than anybody.
Yeah. For me, if I see a strength coach, I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable when it comes to strength conditioning, which is because I've been all over the country and trained at like the top places. So when a guy's talking strength conditioning to me, if it doesn't sound familiar, that's always like a red flag for me. Like, either this guy knows some shit that I haven't heard of, or this guy doesn't know shit. So I try to think about that, but also like I just look at the guy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Does this guy look like something or he's doing something that I want to be a part of?
Right.
And if you want to look like a musclehead and be a strong guy, and be a power lifter, then maybe train with a power lifter. And if you want to be a twig or a yogi that wants to be super flexible, maybe train with a yogi.
Truth.
That's probably like the easiest way. There's always going to be your outliers that are maybe they don't pass the eye test. I always say like an athlete, you see an athlete and you're just like, okay, that guy passes the eye test. He's 6'3", 225 and jacked. Like he's probably going to be pretty good. Or do you have the guy that's like a short, whatever guy, stubby, and it's like, I don't know about that guy. He doesn't pass the eye test. But there's always going to be your exception to anything.
I almost feel like the trainers that are not as in good shape or living in themselves, they become almost better salespeople. Like they have to work harder at trying to create the image that they do know everything, and they be a little bit more bossy and sort of things like that.
Right. I think if you go to the approaches like everything too, you might know everything today, but the problem is if you think you know everything today, in 10 years, there's going to be new stuff that you missed because you just thought you knew everything already. So the guys that, like I follow a lot of fitness accounts and strength coaches, and if they're like most of the ones at the highest level, most of their stuff's evolving and getting better and better and better.
Right.
So, and if it's not, like it's kind of becoming a thing of the past.
Ooh, that's good.
But the thing of the past works for like just a normal, like if you don't want to be a pro athlete.
Right. Yeah.
But if you want to be a pro athlete, you better be dialed into or at least if you want to reach your maximum potential.
That's good.
I was going to say too, the general population, I feel like lets these people get away with it.
Right. Yeah. They're just not educated.
They know 10% of what we know, what these guys know.
True.
And they get wind of that and they can walk into anywhere, a church, and pitch to all these people that, hey, here's a few things that you don't do on a daily basis, and they're just basic things. Sleep hygiene is a huge one.
Yeah.
So
that's
like
good.
our guy that we visited.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, what you're saying is just not true, bud. Because I know what that is.
Yeah.
And I know what the best of the best stuff is. And if not, then if you have is lower than what I already know. Right. So you're not tricking anyone, but you will trick a lot of people, and that stuff will work. I'm trying to stay away from the name, but that stuff will work for a lot of people. But don't pitch it to me as it's the best thing in the world. When it's something I can get at Sam's Club.
Yeah, and I was even being nice by saying the general population. I mean, athletes are still getting swindled by these people constantly.
Because they're not. Because most athletes are not passionate. I would say I'm like a health freak. Like when I go to the field, it's like, bro, this guy's over the top, and yeah, I probably am over the top when it comes to it. But I'm just super passionate about it. So most of the guys know, how am I going to say this? Like that stuff is better than doing nothing. So if you're not doing anything, then that's like a step in the right direction.
Right.
That's a good point.
But for me, going from our boy out in Mesa to going there, it's like I'm going in the wrong direction.
Right.
But for somebody that's never done any of that, great play, Go ahead.
It still bugs me because people are being shortchanged, and I think I know some great, amazing people that have doctor before their name, physical therapists, chiropractors. There's some great, amazing people in there. I don't want to just push up. I see a growing number of people that are like, well, what does my physical therapist say? What does the doctor say? What does this place that has really fancy equipment or such and such say? The expert, the top, expert person, they're following them without actually putting it, if I were to go into one of these places, I would want to make sure that I have an understanding of myself, taking responsibility for my own body. And I think, like you were saying, that they don't know maybe they know 10% of what we know. It still bothers me that that's out there as sort of like a scam. I want to, do something, put a rule of the whistle on these people to show other people so they can make good choices, and the competition can rise to the top. Because right now I think there's too big of a monopoly on the charlatans, the fake people out there that are sucking people into a little bit of good, but they're being shortchanged so much.
I think the biggest thing with that is people have to be willing to admit what they thought was wrong. So if you think the local PT or whatever is the smartest person,
Right.
and then tomorrow you realize that maybe they're not,
Yeah.
you have to be willing to admit that yesterday I was wrong, because
Right.
yesterday I thought this was the best.
Yeah.
And it's okay, like, it's just, are you willing to admit that you're wrong or not? And that's with anything. Like, can
It's
you
true.
say, okay, what I've been doing for the last 2 years has been wrong? That's a hard thing to like swallow for a lot of people.
Or to even look at it like, this is where I kind of got into it. Now it's time to grow and change. It's time to evolve to the next step of reality.
Right. I don't know how many friends I feel like we've almost like went through just because of, and we're still friends with them, but it's just like, I always tell her, Tay, if these people aren't progressing the way we are,
Good.
then there's going to be a disconnect at some point, and it's going to suck because maybe we're emotionally attached to these people. But at some point, there's going to be a disconnect because we've progressed in this way. Maybe our way is not even right, but they progressed in that way, and now we just went different directions, and it's fine.
Right.
But that's just part of life. And if we're constantly saying the same things and driving the same way to work every day and eating the same exact stuff and doing the same thing every single day, then we're decaying.
Yeah.
There was a quote, it was
100%.
like, the purest thing, and I think it was Evan Britton that said this, or maybe Mike Stud, the purest thing on earth is water. And even when water sits still, gets algae.
Nice.
Fire.
That is
Quote.
good right there. That's
And that's the
beautiful.
purest thing we have.
Yeah.
So if we're going to sit still in the same or do the same thing, this was like my pep talk to get her to move out here instead of just staying in Florida. It was like, when we get back to Florida, everybody in Florida is going to be doing the same thing they were doing when we left. So we can always go back to Florida and do that. That's always going to be an option.
Yeah.
When we're 40, we can always go back. When maybe 6 months from now, we can always go back.
Right.
But we're never going to know what this looks like unless we go for it.
That's amazing.
And maybe we go for it and maybe it doesn't work and then we go back and reset.
Right.
But at like some point we have to take chances.
Yes.
And then adjust as things play out.
Oh, that's good. It really, I get, my heart breaks. I think there's a growing number of people, especially since the COVID thing, of I'm going to do my 8 hours of work. And then after that, I'm going to go out to eat and I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to watch TV. I think that's like, I don't know what percentage of the population, like 80% of the population. I'm not going to do anything to better myself. I might go to the gym every now and then. I might join, participate in something on Saturdays. But it really bothers me that person is miserable in their 8 hours a day job. They're complaining. They're beat down from it. But they don't do anything in that spare time to try to set a goal to break out of that. Maybe take one class. Go sign up for, maybe you like sports. Sign up for one jiu-jitsu class a week. Something that you're growing and changing, progressing. Maybe you want out of that job. Take one class a night and some passion that you have. And for me, it's so hard to understand why a person would sit in that water that's just growing more and more stale. And it gets easier, I think, the longer you're in. It's harder to break out of there and purify that water, but make that little change, once a week.
Yeah.
It frustrates. Why can't just go do it?
I don't think people get enough opportunities to take a break and see what it's like. Because people will get a break off from work.
You got it.
They'll get a break off from work, but they won't do anything with that break. They'll just
Right.
game. They'll stay at home and they'll eat the food that makes them feel comfortable and all that kind of stuff. They don't go on a trip and all this sort of stuff. And I kind of I'm only 25. I haven't had a 9-to-5 job for many years now, but the minute I felt like, oh shoot, I am doing everything the same all the time, every day, all this sort of stuff, I went home to Chicago, saw my family, and I got COVID, and I was home for like 2 weeks extra than I was supposed to, and I got a break where my mind wasn't like, okay, here's this trip I was here for,
Right.
but now here's 2 weeks, a week or whatever that I'm gonna get to do something different. And luckily I was pulled away. I was in a complete different environment from Arizona and got to enjoy, you know, time away. And so in that time, guess what you do? You have to figure out what you love. Yeah. And a lot of these people don't get time to figure out what they love, and then they're stuck because they don't know they don't know what they love outside of work. Right. Not that they love work, but they just have no sense of it. They don't.
It's so true.
Yeah, they have no clue.
That's such a good word. The Bible talks a lot about the importance of, on a regular basis, getting out to the desert or out to the mountain, and that's been a huge component of my health. Sometimes I'm too sick to get all the way out to the way out in the desert and a mountain, but where can you get to that's getting away from everything? I believe that anywhere you are, maybe it takes a couple miles of a sacrifice or whatever, but I have a spot that I found that's only like a mile away where I try to make myself, if I can't get out to the desert or out to a mountain, to get that, what you're talking about every week, where I'm out in nature and I spend time with God, but it's also a time where I kind of reflect on where I am. I think what you're talking about is, the more I think about it, it's a huge component of health that needs to happen. That's a good place to start making that change.
What did you say?
Well, maybe you can go off of this. I feel like too, people are so comfortable in that drive every day, in that 9 to 5, that if the job is just kind of, this is doable, it's not really killing me, you know, whatever, then they really will get comfortable. But if their boss is a dick to the point where I can't work here anymore, all this kind of stuff, then they'll make that change, right? Or, you know, they get some bad news or whatever the case, they wait till then to do that. But I was just saying too, people aren't in those 9 to 5 jobs taking time to get away from it. Like, I resonate a lot with what you said about, hey, get away from Florida. Florida will still be there. It'll still be the same. Ooh. Every time I go back to Chicago and I see my aunts and uncles and all that kind of stuff, and they're like, are you going to come back to Chicago? And all? They're still the same people. Yeah. They change a little bit. Right. That's all. Everybody there is still the same for me. And so being here helps me grow way more than staying there. I mean, it's not even close.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, I think especially being around like family and stuff, because your family they remember like what you were when you left. So then there's always a little bit of like catching up phase. Like, oh shit, he's doing this now, and like he wasn't doing that when he was here before, you know. But for the most part, I think, especially as a kid, like you have to leave the nest. You have to. Yeah. At some point, you have to jump out of the nest and fly. And if not, like you might not ever learn how to fly, you know. So I think that's the biggest thing as like for a kid or quote unquote kid, like at some point you have to break out of what's comfortable. And then for a person that's already established with a job and stuff, probably the biggest maybe hold up for them is if they have kids and they have to pay finances. Maybe the problem is saving first, like a money problem first, like they're spending everything they have, so then they don't have the finances to make the move they want.
That's true. Yeah.
So if you pop out a kid or two and now you're in the 9 to 5 and now you need diapers.
Yep.
So like the paying for the jiu-jitsu class becomes like lower on the totem pole.
I think that's why it's so important to have a goal. I just think it's so vital with budget and everything and anything. There's a solution, I think, to anything. And I think that happens to people, though. They get hit with something and they don't change. They don't say, hey, I need to shift my goal here to get to this kind of thing here.
And parks are free. Like, you don't have to pay to go to the park.
Oh, man, I love the parks. The kids thing is interesting. There's going to be, I feel like when you have a kid, it's always the first couple years where it's always going to be a lot more work. Even then, there's solutions through that. But like you can do a double. I learned to do a double thing with my kids. Like I'm really working on spending time each week with each kid. You know what I mean? So like Kai, I wanted to spend time alone with him this morning, but I also needed to get in once a week. I try to do a long, like jog or walk, jog, and breath work. So I took him along with me, so I was able to exercise while I'm spending time with the kid. And I think that's like, as a parent, learning how to do those things, like your parents managing, the baseball thing, how they had to, do two things at the same time to try to get through it. I think those things are important.
Yeah.
I would just say that the goal is a lot easier for being a parent, because you're taking care of your kid. That's the goal. You know, when you're just a kid like us working a 9-to-5 job,
it's true.
So easy to get stuck.
Sometimes motivation becomes hard because it's
so hard.
You're right.
But if you have a kid now, it's like you better be motivated because you have to take care of the kid,
or you're a loser.
It's true.
Yeah, plain and simple.
A lot of my motivation now, like, is like going back like 2 or 3 years. It was always just like, I'm gonna be fucking better than you, and I'm gonna be the best ever. And now it's like, I want my kids to have this. Like, I want Taya to have this. Like, I want this life for Taya and, like, my family. So, just funny how, like, my motivation originally was like, fuck all you guys, I'm the best ever. I'm going to be the best. Which, that's good. Like, there's a place for that. If that's going to motivate you, then let it run with it. But now it's shifted. Like, as long as there's, like, some sort of motivation.
Right.
Like, if you get motivated by something, just run with it. And then when it runs out, then get motivated by something else.
Definitely.
Ooh, that's good.
Breakups are the best.
Yeah.
Change into a whole different person.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So quick update on, I want to try to give health updates. So like this week has been one of my best weeks in a while. We took a chemo break, and things are going pretty. We got back on the chemo and had a real rough one with a lot of sides going, a lot of cancer building. We actually had some new tumors pop up in the collarbone, which is kind of like, man. However, this week things kind of shifted more than I was. Ara and I and my medical staff at Mayo were ready for a rough week this week, and instead it turned out to be a much better week than we thought. Somehow this new med I'm doing, the chemo that I'm doing, it boosts T cells in the body. So we've even noticed I'm getting some hair growth on the top of my hopeful. Come on. It's like, it's starting to get a little hair growth that I never had before, because I haven't come off chemo really for enough time to really get any kind of hair growth back on the top of the head. But it's doing some weird things in my body. It's some stuff I've never been through in these chemos, and it's been, I'm used to a certain style of what the chemo does to me, and this one has given me more energy. It'll have side effects, but I will also drop down really fast with it too. But this week, it's just been, I'm really grateful. I think a lot of people have sent prayers and some really encouraging messages and things like that. And to be able to look forward to come to this podcast, we're so grateful to Dana, to the hard work that you do, man. And it means a lot. I think that's a huge thing too. And motivation is, maybe start doing something that you get to look forward to. That's, we I say we got thousands of you. We're starting off pretty small, but hey, we're going to put the time into this. But it's been a really good week overall, I think. And I'm super grateful for where I am. And I was thinking, I'm really, really working hard. I've been working on this book forever, and I feel like the story kind of changed. I was almost ready to release it a couple years ago, and so much changed in my life that it kind of shifted my book. And I finally feel like this is the time now. Things are kind of, we're getting towards some goals that I had set, where it's getting to the point where it's about ready to release the book. And the book is going to be basically like tools and tips for cancer patients, but I kind of share a journal of things that I did, but also the tools and tips I want to be for kind of people that optimizing health or whatever kind of stuff we talk about on the show, going into the Untapped. Where do you go when you get in the Untapped? So I wanted to share three, everybody be ready. I'm going to share this. I don't know if I should. I'm going to share 3 secret tips that I have for when you get into very difficult health situations, when you're feeling very sick. Now everybody knows you want to go into exercise, we want to move more, and we want to drink water, and we want to do all these common knowledge things that are harder and can get more complex than we say. But what are some things that I've picked up along the way that maybe aren't talked about very much? And the first one, and it's taken me a while to get to this point. The first one is the clothes you wear. It's so important. I found it's so important when you're not feeling good. What are the kinds of clothes you're wearing? And when I over time, I remember I'd go and visit patients. I'd get little breaks and stuff that were in very sick. I'd kind of make friends in the cancer network. And I'd show up to these veteran cancer patients that have been battling like a long time, battling life and death over time. And I'd show up and they'd be wearing super colorful stuff. They'd be wearing tie-dye, colorful shirts, and not maybe every single one of them, but like 9 out of 10 was dressed. And I was like, wow, what is it to that? And over time, I started to realize that if I'm at home, we feel like we got our sick clothes that we wear, our comfortable clothes maybe, or whatever. And I learned that the more sick that I get, the more I want to dress in that opposite way. Maybe I don't want, for me, I don't, there's been times I've actually worn a suit. I've, kind of worn the suit in the house, or maybe wore it to the store or something like that, because I'm going to counter everything in my body that says I'm going to dress like a sick person. And there's something about having those clothes on us, the feeling and the image it conveys. And when we really tap into, hey, I'm going to dress as colorful as possible. I don't want to get too wild where I'm just making people like, what the heck, or whatever. But I found that dressing and ready to exercise. I'm ready to, the more sick that I feel, I'm going to dress in my best exercise threads. I'm going to dress in my most colorful threads. I'm going to try to create a style, something out there. I feel like that has been a huge tool that I've been able to utilize that helps me when you're going through those sick times.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks. Right on.
I totally feel you on that. Like wearing your sick clothes for sure. I can see
people do that a
myself doing
lot.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed that even when I was in treatment, there was a hospital I stayed in that you had to wear a gown when you had to spend excessive time in there, and everybody's had those things on. And when you have that on day after day, and you're changing that, and that's all you're wearing, oh man, it starts to get to you here. So I ended up leaving that hospital and making a choice to a different one where I could wear what I want. I felt like it was super important. The second thing that I've noticed is your sound environment. And Dana's become a master at this. He's a high-level specialist in the world of sound stuff. But I didn't realize early on how much my sound environment was making me sick, because everybody's had like a really bad case of the flu with nausea, or maybe a bad hangover or something, where it's just like, oh man, every noise I can hear it, and every sound is making me feel more sick. And I noticed as I was going along, that I was getting like, the environment. I didn't even notice sometimes actually that the environment that I was in, I'd be staying in the hospital and then hear every little sound would be magnified like it was coming through a speaker or something, and it was making me so sick. Or I'd be spending time maybe with my dad and he'd be eating, and every sound was just making me kind of sick. And so I learned that over time that I really need to make sure that have awareness of my sound environment, that I'm, if I'm not feeling good or something, or what is the sound environment like right now? And noise canceling earbuds for probably 7-8 years now have been just so powerful to me, because I can block out the noise and use them as earplugs, which I've used sometimes too. But I can also put in sound into my head. I like to put up praise and worship when I get really sick, or just music, or a positive podcast. And then I really learned too, it's got to be careful of what goes in there, because when you're sick too, that can make you more sick when you're putting stuff in. Even watching TV and you're hearing that sound of maybe like a negative, or a show that maybe like a crime scene or something that's kind of violent or whatever, getting that stuff in that goes into your ears, it's going to make you feel more sick. When you're sick, you don't want that. You want something that's going to be more positive. But that's the number 2 one, is the sound environment. So when you're sick, you should become like Dana and just become a high level music producer and block out that sound. Get that. Listen to Doc's beats. I listen to a lot of Doc's beats as well. And I'm sick, so I might not be able to move much, but man, you can't help but move when you're listening to Doc's beats. So you got to get into that vibe. And the third one is, it's being more and more popular now. We talk about it on here a lot, but I think that it's the value of it is way, way, way still unknown and minimizes breath work. That's something that I've been doing now for probably 8 or 9 years. When I got my first case of pneumonia, I realized how important breath work is. And that's evolved over time as I've learned more and more about you can get really far and specialize in there. I have a lot to learn still, I feel like, in breath work, but that's something that I pay a lot of attention to every day. What am I breathing like right now? What is my breathing and what is my posture? If I'm feeling sick, what kind of breathing would make me feel better? What does it feel like? I'll pay attention when I'm feeling really good and having the best time, and I'll try to snapshot those. Maybe I'm hanging with the boys and we're laughing. What does my breathing feel like? Real quick, I'll take account of it. So then when I'm sick, I try to replicate that same breath work and that same image, or maybe like try to get that beautiful snapshot scene. I haven't been out of town in quite a while, but I was in Sedona a while back, and just that snapshot of just, the beautiful outdoors and everything like that. But getting that, when you have that snapshot, what is that breath? Slowing the breathing down maybe needs to happen, or maybe priming my breath, just things like that. So that's the third tip I got. So those are my 3 secret tips and just a little taste of what I'm working at and trying to finish up the book I'm writing.
Nice. I like that.
Let's go.
I like that a lot.
Stoked, yeah.
Right. How we doing on time, Mr. Dana?
It's however long. It's the boys today. It's
How long has that been?
It's an hour and 35.
Oh
nice.
my
That's good.
gosh.
Yeah.
That much time went by. I didn't feel that. Taya's like, oh, I'm feeling it. Just kidding. She's like, it's so nice to have Taya's vibe in here. We got to get Ara in here. That on Sundays she's usually prepping, and getting things ready for the cook tomorrow and things like that. But I'd love to get Taya on the pod, get Chef Mama Ara on the pod as well.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. What do you got planned for this week?
Tuesday I throw flat ground, which is like basically a bullpen but not on the mound.
Wow.
And then Friday I want to throw another bullpen. My first bullpen was last Friday since surgery.
Wow.
So it was the first time off the mound in a long time.
Did you end up clocking the throw?
Yeah, I was like 90-92, which for this time is like, so
yeah, that's great.
Before I got hurt, I was February 1st of 2 years ago. That was before I got hurt. I was 90-93. And then February 24th, I was 98. Dang. So I'm hoping if I'm 90-92 now, my goal to be like 93-94 by the beginning of February. And then hopefully that transitions to...
Everybody send Untapped prayers and love to Levi. I foresee a 103 this year.
Yeah, I hope.
That's what I'm going to predict.
That's ideal.
It's interesting because my arm feels different than it's ever felt before. Like,
wow.
I would say for good right now because I'm throwing really good, but I've never had this type of range of motion and stuff in my arm.
It's amazing.
Which is credit to Joey for like the most part. The Diamondbacks, they helped a lot too, but Joey's like taking it to a whole nother level when it comes to movement and stuff. Yeah. And he's got my lat and everything so freed up. So it feels way different than before. And
do you think the things they're doing there too, like the breath work and the sonic cold plunge along with that is really bringing that to the next level?
It's speeding up the process for sure.
And this right here.
Yeah. Joey's got it dialed in. But my lat's never been this open. Like just everything in my arm has never been this free. Wow. So my pitches are different too. Like I've never been able to throw a sinker, and now I'm throwing a sinker that's pretty good.
What the heck?
Like my four seam is 3 inches of horizontal movement and 18 inches of vertical movement. So it's like, let's say the four seam's right here, and the two seam is 13 inches of horizontal movement and 10 inches of vertical movement. So the 4 seams here and the 2 seams here, but they're released from the same exact spot.
Wow.
So that makes it tough on a hitter. So as long as I can keep doing that, and throw a couple ticks harder, then I'm going to be in a good spot, I feel like. But
we got to get you throwing to Dana. Dana was a pretty high level catcher before. We got to get and record that and put that on little clips on Untapped. That'd be fun.
I don't have any gear, but I do have my catcher's mitt.
Yeah, you better.
I'll catch your flat ground. I'll catch your flat ground bullpen, but maybe not a
flat grounds. I'll probably throw on flat ground when I'm throwing a flat ground, maybe like 85 to 87. Right. But then when I get on the mound, I let it fly a little bit more.
That is wild. That is wild. Well, what do you got, Dana? What you got going on this week? Yeah.
I dialed in my budget because I'm trying to make a move here this coming summer. And so when you dial in your budget, I feel like you dial everything else in too, because then it's like, oh, okay, so this is the food I can get. All right, so this is the workouts I can do because this is the amount of fuel I'm going to be able to have based off the budget, you know? And with that, it's like, I got to train. I trained today too. Today was just like zone 2 cardio and like a little bit of a hike and did some abs and did the sauna. But I got to train 5 days this week, and felt great on every single day because my eating was up there. Yeah, you know. So really, it's just trying to do that again next week, but with more cardio because I didn't do that as much last week. And then probably the week after that will probably be like cardio plus more music, because that's one thing that you can't really fit in all the time when you're constantly meal prepping and you're constantly working out and trying to rest and get 8 hours of sleep and read before you go to bed and do breath work. And it's like music then to me becomes like this big. It's not as important, but it is when you have a show coming up. So
it's such a balance with everything. I feel like trying not to be too over focused on one thing.
Super excited for Dana's show coming up February 2nd in Chicago. Maybe we'll drop some details of that. We've got a really exciting guest coming up in 2 weeks, Dan Garner, best nutritionist, sports nutritionist, and nutritionist overall in the world probably right now. He lives up in Canada. He's been we got to meet him when he came down he'd been working with Sugar Sean O'Malley for 5 years. We work with a lot of the top athletes in the world. So we're really excited to have him on the podcast up ahead.
Let's go far.
You guys got anything else for the day?
I'm good to go.
Hey, this is a fun one. Well, everybody, thanks so much for watching episode 10 of Untapped. We made it through a whole 10 of these. That's amazing. We can't wait for what's next ahead. Thanks for hanging in there with us. Please share comments, especially on those hot kind of what do you call it? Risky. I'm lack of vocabulary. There you go. Yeah. Controversial. That's what I was looking for. I guess we went too long today. Controversial topics. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. We love you. Have a best week.
Peace.